Tremble in fear, Imperium, as Hive Fleet Nihilus approaches. It will consume the galaxy. I'm Matthew from MiniWarGaming, and this is my 10,000 points of Hive Fleet Nihilus. Now immediately you might think, Matthew, 10,000 points? That's not impressive. But you have to understand, I used to have a 25,000 point Tyranid army, Hive Fleet Charon. I say used to, it's down in the basement, I still have it. But I wanted to start a new one, because it's been 15 years in collecting that red and orange army that has like 15 different variations on the theme of how it's actually painted, and the bases are all over the place. I wanted a clean start, and Warhammer 40k 10th edition gave me that start. With the introduction of their Leviathan box, I was able to get a lot of models for a decent price, and I just wanted to start painting them up. Now, I have to say, at first, I wasn't the one painting them up because I didn't always have time to do painting. Running all of the different parts of our YouTube channel and the Forge and everything else, I often commission out painting of our armies in the studio. But after a while, I started to get the painting bug, and I started painting my Tyranids. And then I went to the grand narrative of 2023, and when I was there and half of my bugs were painted, and I got so many compliments on how it looked, that I decided I really want to keep painting these, and I want to be able to say that the entire army that I'm bringing to the grand narrative is something that I have done. So back when I first started this, I had Paul Chartrand help me develop the paint scheme. And it was very important to me that it stuck within a simple paint scheme. The colors were good, but we weren't going to look for some fancy way to paint them. I just want contrast paints, a slap chop method with some highlighting afterwards to make it look really good. And Paul delivered and really helped me to do that. The whole thing is done with nothing but contrast paints, a little bit of washes, and then a tiny bit of highlighting as well in order to make the carapace really pop. But that is really it. Things paint up pretty quickly. I can paint an entire monster in 1 or 2 hours, and I can paint a lot of Griblies in a very short amount of time. So, the thing about this I really want to talk about is how much I love the narrative of Warhammer 40k, and how much I love narrative gaming in general when it comes to playing Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, and all the other games. It draws me in way more than competitive play. I'm more interested in telling a story. That's drawn me in since Dave and I started playing Battletech and role-playing games as teenagers, all the way to playing Dungeons and Dragons and getting back into wargaming when I was an adult. Something that I've loved when I started playing Lord of the Rings, got into games like War Machine, Firestorm Armada, Infinity, and all of the other games that I have grown to love over the years. Gaming is a passion that I have, but not because I want to see my opponents destroyed, but because I want to tell a fantastic story. So you'll notice that this is all set up here on the table. What we're actually preparing for is a 10,000 versus 10,000 point apocalypse game on this very table. Set up with the ruins of Drakenfell terrain, which is actually going to be in a Kickstarter. If it isn't already by the time you watch this video, it has been or will be available on our site, because it depends when you're watching the video. Links below to be able to get this 3D printable set or to have us 3D print it for you. But I wanted to create just a cool looking table and be able to battle it out against the forces of whoever happened to show up. And so I got Sunny and I got Battle Chicken bringing their salamanders and their Necrons. Incorporating, of course, their armies into this and trying to tell a congruent story was interesting, because obviously salamanders and Necrons don't typically get along. It's not Blood Angels and Necrons, right? Right? No bro fisting here. But in this case, we decided that the story is that the Tyranids were invading a world near some Imperium space, and the salamanders answered the call to attack them. And at the same time, the Necrons showed up for other mysterious purposes. It has something to do with the ruins of Drakenfell. There may or may not be some ancient technology beneath the surface of what looks like a fantasy world, but in fact is a world that was colonized millions of years ago during the time that the Necron dynasties ruled the galaxy. So coming up with that idea was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to get set up and start playing this. We've got 5,000 points of Necrons and 5,000 points of salamanders who are going to be taking on these Tyranids. Deployment for this is, of course, a challenge. I didn't want to just set up the table so I have the Tyranids in the middle and then the salamanders on one side and the Necrons on the other. So the best way I've found to do this in Apocalypse games is to kind of picture that you're already in the second turn, that reserves have already shown up and that the fight has already been going on. Not that you remove any models, but that you make sure that everything's on the table, placed in such a way that they're already close to being engaged. If you are a Vault member or a paid YouTube member, you can get early access to this entire Apocalypse game right now at the links below. And if you're not a paid YouTube member or Vault member, please consider supporting us because it helps to pay the bills and allow us to make all this cool content. We'll be putting out the battle report for free in the next couple of weeks, so you can expect to see it out very soon. All right, let's talk scenario and deployment. So an Apocalypse game always provides the unique difficulty of, I don't want to use the word balance because we're not looking for balance here, but a way to create a scenario that is fun and actually feels like everybody can participate in the story. That's my kind of idea of balance. So you, Sonny, were asking me a little earlier, like how do we tell where the objectives are? Like how does that work? I prefer to play it without objective markers on the table, and instead we craft a narrative and then we look at it and we answer the question, does it look like the narrative was achieved? In other words, let's say your job was to destroy the leadership of the Tyranids so that you scatter the fleet. Well, then we look at it and say, well, did you kill enough of the Synapse creatures to do that, right? Or your job was to get in and pillage a relic before before you're overwhelmed. And so we could look at it and say that there's a certain area that you have to hold long enough, but it's not going to be like stay within 3 inches of it. It's like, hold that. It just what it looks like. Make it look like it's right. Or your job is to, defend a certain area to keep them away. That kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay. So I have a few ideas, and then of course you guys are welcome to throw in your ideas as well, because nothing is set in stone at this point. But we just know that we're playing 5,000 points of salamanders, 5,000 points of Necrons, 10,000 points of Tyranids. So my idea is obviously the Tyranids kind of are in the middle with you guys on each side. I don't even care which side. Do you guys have a preference? Which side is whose?
Do not have a preference.
Okay.
Nope.
So the main objectives narratively of the Necrons is that they're here because, and I don't want to give too many spoilers for future campaigns, but essentially millions of years ago when they were a powerful dynasty.
Always were.
Always were, sorry. When you were as well as now, right? That this planet was actually not owned by the Necrons, but it was another xenospecies that had certain technologies that may have integrated Necron technologies with other things. So you're here. Who's your leader of your entire force?
Just an overlord.
Does he have a name?
Oh, I'll have to look that up.
Okay, we'll have to look that up. So overlord, no name. Overlord, fill in the blank, is here because he was there millions of years ago, and so he's aware of what's this. And now that he sees that the xenospecies is gone and extinct, he sees an opportunity.
I want my property back.
Right, he wants to go in and then pillage this technology so that he can become the supreme overlord of the entire galaxy, of course, because that's what every overlord wants eventually. And so that you're here for that. But when you arrive here, there's already this embroiled battle between the salamanders and the Tyranids, because the salamanders don't know that this is some ancient Xenos world. They just know that it's an Imperium world. Or hoity-toity, this all belongs to an Imperium, right?
Always has been.
Always has been. Always has been, right?
Hippity-hoppity, get off my property.
Yeah, right? It always has been Imperium for at least 10,000 years. Anyways, and so you're here, and there's already this fight going on, and the Necrons show up. So I would say that the salamanders, I'm not sure how they would view the Necrons showing up as like advantageous, because they see the Necrons not engage the salamanders, but instead engage the Tyranids. Because it just so happens that the site of this battle is a place that they need to get to. And so it would be kind of dumb of this overlord, and he's not a dumb overlord, these are very tactically sound people, to engage both the salamanders and the Tyranids at the same time. So you kind of like pick a side and try to punch through that and get this stuff and get out of there, or at least like get to the deeper levels so that you can work with that while they all fight on the surface, because Tyranids are surface feeders in the end, right? Mm-hmm. So, and who's the leader of your salamanders here today?
I have to give him a name. It's a Gravis captain.
A Gravis captain,
yeah.
No name.
Yeah.
All right, you're gonna have to come up with a name before we get started in the first turn.
Most definitely.
Yeah, if we're gonna be doing an apocalypse, I don't have to name my guys. Mm-hmm. It's
Hey, Bubby.
Yeah, right. That's their names. So you just couldn't understand the language, and I'm sorry. But yeah, so in this you're seeing bioforms you've never seen before, and enormous Hive Tyrants, enormous Neuro Tyrants, flying Maleceptors, things that are just like unusual, and it's just strange that you have to fight these. But you haven't been losing this battle, but this war, I should say. It's been a pretty deeply embroiled one as you fight this Hive fleet. So what I think we should do then is, did you say which side you wanted?
I'll pick this side.
Okay, so we would have the Salamanders mainly set up here, and we'd mainly have the Necrons set up there. But I want to kind of represent that we're almost like starting on turn 2. And so there's going to be no reserves, but instead we'll look at your reserves, like you have a drop pod, for example, and we'll start it on the table, and we'll kind of pick a spot more middle for those reserves. And the same thing for some of my reserves, like my Raveners, for example, deep striking. I might have them deep strike with some other deep strikers like Ripper Swarms, maybe some of the flying stuff. Would like start over here in like this corner. So we'll cordon off these areas, and we'll start super close to each other, like 6 inches away. The idea is we're just right in the none of this 24-inch nonsense where it's like the first turn you saunter up and maybe you get a charge. It's like, no, turn 1, carnage. If we're not removing thousands of points of models every turn,
we're doing it wrong.
We're doing Apocalypse wrong.
Yeah.
And the same thing, I might do something back there, wherever it makes sense. We'll kind of look at it visually. I picture all my big fat bugs and your big tanks and like your monolithic imposing stuff that would be like on the table grinding forward and pushing back, like the Carnifexes, Tyrannifexes, the Hero Duels. The Grand Hive Tyrant even will be like in the middle of one of the fronts, just pushing back against everything. Whereas all the other skirmishing stuff will be happening, and I can see some Necrons here. So technically, you guys are not allies. So this is technically a 3-way battle. I am using the word technically over and over again.
Because that's the best kind of correct.
It's the best kind of correct. So, because I don't want to dictate what's going to happen, because we have no idea how this battle is going to go. Like, for example, the Tyranids might do really well, and you guys get eliminated pretty quickly. That doesn't usually happen in Apocalypse, because usually both sides get to just destroy stuff. Or the Tyranids could be doing very poorly in just a turn or two. That can happen as well. And all the power levels that you're currently used to are out the window, because at this level, it's just things are going to die very quickly. And so what I'm going to say is that you guys aren't allies, and if there are opportunities that you see that you would want to expunge some of other xenospecies, that you might consider that.
Sure.
And of course,
destroy the unclean.
If there is something in your way that has teleported to the wrong place at the wrong time, and you need to deploy some death marks to maybe cut off the leadership. Or maybe you're seeing the Tyranids you're beating the Tyranids well enough, but the Salamanders are doing a little too well, that you might want to be like, shoot, then we're not going to have time to complete our secondary objectives. And so you might want to consider, something. And once again, I'm not going to say what. I'm not even trying to hint that you have to sabotage each other.
Right.
Because maybe you don't need to. Maybe the fight against the Tyranids will be hard enough, and we don't need that. But as you're watching how everything's going, just feel free to shake things up. Because for me, it's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to be trying to murder both of you. And you're just biomass and things in the way of eating biomass.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So either way, enemy number 1 and enemy number 1.
Yep.
So I'm all for that. Okay, you ready? Any questions?
Nope. You any questions?
No.
All right, let's get deploying.
Okay.
In the end, we decided on a lot of different ideas for the deployment. So let's start over on the Necron side. I started by deploying all of my gargoyles and the flying Hive Tyrant and the flying Maleceptor and spore mines and the parasite. So basically everything that flies. It's not a major force, but it's more a harassment force behind the main Necron lines. As for the Necrons, we are playing it as if they just blew a hole in this wall and are now swarming through, the Overlord leading the charge, of course, ready to engage the masses of Tyranids that are right behind it. In the meantime, the Necrons have an outflanking and deep striking force of Death Marks and Catan and Destroyer Cults and Flayed Ones, all ready to push towards the central statue, which holds one of the entrances to the catacombs beneath. And on this side, we've got Space Marines who have decided to deep strike in or fly down or infiltrate in to try to deal with the Grand Neuro Tyrant, because they can feel a heavy psychic presence coming from this side with a Norn Emissary and several Neuro Tyrants. just to be met with the Termagants and the Gene Stealers who are ready to receive them. Come to the Salamander side of the table. They've got their main forces advancing up against the Grand Neuro Tyrant and the Swarm Lord, Old One Eye with all the Carnifexes and Screamer Killers, meeting another Tervagon with its broods of Termagants. But they are also having to respond to a force of Lictors, the Death Leaper, the Von Ryans Leapers, the Ripper Swarms, and even some Raveners who are coming out of the underground caverns and trying to outflank the Salamanders. So the idea here is that we have a battle on all fronts and that we don't have really many units that don't have something to engage rather quickly. And that way everything can start fighting and we'll have a deadly first and second turn and probably a third and fourth just to mop things up to finish any important fights and see who narratively will win this battle in Drakenfell. And thus the battle for Drakenfell continues, because we are jumping right into it. And as we said before, the battle report is available right now, early access to our Vault members and YouTube members, and shortly after that it will be available for free as well. So go check it out, and we'll see you in the game.